So, when I was 3, I broke my arm trying to balance on a ball because I was convinced that if an elephant could, so could I. I told my parents that I accidentally fell off the bed because I was trying to fly, as if that was less alarming than these imaginary circus act attempts. Anyway, I continued on as a pretty whimsical child. Thank you, parents. I formed a secret society that was apparently so secret, no one came to my meetings, not even my stuffed animals. I was blessed with a dad who believed that I'd one day get him a night in the Lincoln bedroom, and a mom who brought home plastic bottles and leftover construction paper from work so that I could use them to build a tiny town in our living room while she made dinner. She taught me the meaning of prototyping before it was a thing. When I was little, I really thought I was onto something. Solving these problems in my imaginary worlds ingrained in me this belief that I could solve bigger, real problems in the world one day. But then, when I was 6, a concerned teacher of mine invited my parents into school to discuss the fact that I had painted a pumpkin purple. She recommended that I be moved into the slow track because she really thought that I wasn't seeing the world the right way. As a little girl, really, it's terrible. It turned out okay. As a little girl, my imagination was my superpower. It was the thing that made me feel like I had power. When we're young, we assume so little about what can or can't be true in the world. But as we grow up, our minds become clouded with rules and weighted with judgments. We become limited by these assumptions that we were never actually directly asked to assume. At some point, I started to believe that the part of me that made me Bethany wasn't the part of me I should hold on to. My dreams, my inventions, my crazy ideas, my drawings, they just weren't what the world wanted. In school, we're taught that these wizards of invention, Vinci, Edison, Einstein, came to their most profound conclusions through these strokes of genius, the result of these natural gifts. And our only hope to matching such achievements was to stop drawing, stop imagining, and study, study, study. But the crazy thing is that what was always left out was the fact that the fuel that made these brilliant minds burn so bright was their constant engagement in the arts. From the time he was a child, Da Vinci carried around a sketch pad and a pencil with him everywhere and drew constantly. Everything, every problem that he saw around him. And even Edison, he left behind 3,500 notebooks in which he relentlessly recorded and illustrated every single problem he came across. Einstein believed the greatest scientists are also artists. He solved even his toughest equations using piano and violin. When we associate acts of creativity and innovation with these strokes of genius, these terms that feel unachievable to a lot of us, we begin to think that they're just unachievable. Society tells us that we can't make magic if we're not part of this creative wizard class. But when we look behind creativity's curtain, we find people like us doing things we can do. Each of us, each of you, has the capacity to be that creative wizard. And it's really much simpler than you might think. You just need a magic wand and a blank canvas. I left one up in a community recently just to see what would happen with paints and supplies attached. And almost basically 24 hours, tons of people later, 40, 50, maybe even more, I didn't exactly count, this appeared. I replaced it with another blank canvas, and after the end of the second day, I came back to find this. And then another 24 hours, loads of people later, this. I was in awe. These were masterpieces. Paintbrushes were transformed into these magic wands that were just igniting these sparks of creative confidence. And the result was magic. It convinced me that this simple experiment, if scaled, could make a tremendous impact. And we have a lot of problems in our world, right? We need that positive impact. We're desperate for creative solutions. But take a look at this. A study analyzing 300,000 Torrance creativity scores over a 35-year period found that creative thinking skills have been in sharp decline since 1990. This is despite the fact that a recent IBM survey of 1,500 global CEOs found that creativity is actually ranked as the most crucial and critical skill for the modern world. The research clearly indicates that the more arts we engage in across our lifetimes, the greater likelihood we'll achieve success in the workplace. But what's frightening is that if we don't engage in any sort of arts when we're a kid, there's only about a 5% chance that we'll participate in any arts later on if we're not actively re-engaged somehow. Which is why cultivating creative opportunities isn't just nice, but it's absolutely necessary for building a better world. And it's much simpler than you might think. Just as simple as integrating more blank canvases into our lives, which is exactly what I'm working on now. What if we break down the myth that we're either creative or we're not, and we believe with conviction that imagination is a fundamental part of building our reality? What if we break free from our assumed abilities, and next time we think of a pumpkin, maybe we don't think of it as orange, but what if we imagine a spectrum of pumpkins? Isn't that closer to reality anyway? That's a purple pumpkin. They exist. Thank you.